While walking through the torn remains of Yoshiwara, Kakashi is shocked to see the extent of the battle, before climbing over a roof and discovering Tanjiro, Inosuke, Zenitsu, and Nezuko. Elsewhere, the increasingly ill Kaguya is overjoyed to discover that an upper rank has been killed, the first in 100 years, believing it to be an omen that fate is about to change dramatically and that Muzan Kibutsuji will soon fall to the current generation of demon slayers. Meanwhile, finding himself within the Infinity Castle, Akaza realizes that his summoning means that an upper-ranked demon has been killed by the demon slayers. Leaping off the edge of the rooms, he descends to the lower regions of the alternate dimension. He flies past a large water garden palace and eventually lands at the bottom. As the castle begins to shift, a moving platform catches Akaza and elevates his position. Several giant doors open as they sense his presence, and the demon is transported high above the moving rooms, where he finds himself passing through an endlessly large maze-like room of pillars. A biwa strum suddenly echoes and Akaza is taken to a platform in front of the biwa woman who controls the castle. Akaza finds himself on a platform with an ornate pot beside him. Suddenly, a voice from inside the pot recognizes him and emerges to reveal an unusual djinn-like demon composed of infantile hands and a distended body. The demon is delighted to see Akaza in good health and mentions that it has been 90 years since they last met. Goryako, the upper rank 5 of the 12 Kazuki, expresses concern about Akaza's well-being and annoys him by insinuating that he could have died. A skittish and anxious demon crouches nearby, commenting on Goryako's mistake in calculating the time. This demon is Hantengu, the upper rank 4, who then proceeds to rant fearfully about the strange number of years that have passed since their last summoning. Akaza asks the biwa woman about the whereabouts of Muzan, the leader of the demons, but she informs him that he has not yet arrived. He then queries about the fate of the upper one, skeptical that he has been killed. Suddenly, a cheerful voice addresses Akaza, and the Infinity Castle rapidly darkens as the upper rank 2 demon arrives. Dama, the demon, places his hand on Akaza's shoulder and asks if he was worried about him, mentioning his concern for his cherished comrades. Goryako greets Dama, who in turn compliments his new pot and shares that he has added a woman's severed head as decoration to an old pot. Goryako applauds his creativity. Akaza becomes furious when Dama touches him and demands that he move his arm. As Akaza turns to face him, Upper 3 repeats his order and delivers a powerful punch that knocks off his superior's bottom jaw. Hantengu is frightened, but Dama easily heals the wound and comments on the punch's increased power compared to last time, which only makes Akaza even more angry. The biwa woman then answers Akaza's question, revealing that Upper 1 was summoned first and is currently listening to them. Akaza looks to the platform's edge and sees someone kneeling in the distance. It is Upper Rank 1, a samurai-like demon named Kokoshibo, who reveals that he has been present all along and informs them that Muzan has now arrived. Muzan appears above the upper ranks at the ceiling of the Infinity Castle and informs them of Goryutero's death and the upper ranks in complete numbers. He performs private experiments using chemistry equipment. The demon progenitor denies his penance and irritably states that he knew of Goryutero's inevitable defeat, believing that Daki was a hindrance and claiming that he could have won if he had poisoned the demon slayers and avoided a prolonged battle. He scolds the upper ranks, calling them worthless and claiming that they now fall under the ranks of remaining humanity instead of power. Muzan further states that he did not expect much from them. As Dama tries to calm down his enraged master, Muzan rebukes the upper ranks for their failure to eradicate the Yubaeshiki family and locate the blue spider lily, both of which are necessary for his ultimate survival. He slams his desk in fury, causing his equipment to shatter, and questions how they could have been searching for centuries and still come up empty-handed. He expresses disappointment in their incompetence and even questions their purpose. Hantengu trembles with fear, Akaza remains silent in shame, Kokoshibo admits defeat, acknowledging Yubaeshiki's ability to remain hidden, and Dama apologizes for his lack of skills in the matter. Goryako claims he has information that may be useful, but is suddenly decapitated by Muzan, who appears out of nowhere. Muzan expresses his disdain for change, both physical and emotional, and believes that a state of permanence is superior. While examining the memories of Upper 5, Muzan expresses his anger over the first change in the upper ranks in 113 years and warns Goryako never to provide unconfirmed information. Despite being decapitated, Goryako seems to enjoy the physical contact with his master and agrees with his philosophy. As the biwa demon manipulates Goryako's gravity, Muzan drops his head and addresses the upper ranks once more. He demands that they fight with more urgency, as he had been too lenient with them. Muzan then orders Goryako to travel with Hantengu to the chosen location and to confirm his information before doors appear and close off his presence. However, Goryako becomes annoyed at being joined on his mission. Dama suddenly appears beside Goryako and asks about the information he possesses to join him, but Goryako does not answer. Akaza then walks behind Dama and slices off the top of Upper 2's head, annoyed that Dama would attempt to join a mission without Muzan's orders. Akaza's hand falls off and Kokoshibo instantly appears in front of him, stunning Akaza into silence with his powerful aura. Dama quickly heals his head and placates Kokoshibo's anger, telling him he did not mind the attack. Upper 1 informs Kokushibo that he is not acting for his benefit but rather addressing a disruption in the hierarchy as it undermines authority. Upper 2 acknowledges this. Kokushibo tells Akaza to engage in a battle if he is disgruntled, but Dama claims that Akaza could never defeat them both. He adds that Akaza is simply upset because he has surpassed his rank, despite being younger, and Upper 3 listens to this angrily. Dama mentions that he purposely did not dodge the blow as an act of friendship and remarks that they should not scorn their subordinates. In the scene, Kokushibo directly addresses Akaza, asking if he understood what he had just said. Akaza responds with rage, trembling as he acknowledges Kokushibo's words and threatens to kill him. Upper 1 walks away, leaving words of encouragement before vanishing. Dama then bids farewell to Kokushibo and attempts to talk to Akaza, expressing his feelings of being ignored during their conversation. However, Akaza leaps upwards and leaves the platform. Goyako then orders the Biwa demon to transport herself and Hantengu away, vanishing as the sounds of her Biwa echo throughout the castle. Dama then tries to talk to her and invite her to his place, but she declines and transports him away from the castle center. Back at his residence, Dama comments on his fellow demon's cold attitudes but is quickly informed that new followers have arrived. Upper 2 quickly puts on his hat and instructs them to be let in. In another setting, a demon slayer wearing Hanafuda earrings is brought tea by someone and kindly thanks him. He apologizes for having the visitor watch his child and for his wife being asleep, but the visitor does not mind and understands the difficulties of giving birth and raising a child. The host adds that it would be impolite to eat the free food for too long and mentions leaving soon. However, the visitor denies any disrespect, claiming that he saved their lives and allowed their child to be born. The host asks for the visitor's name, wanting to preserve it, but the visitor refuses to identify himself, despite not having an heir to pass his name down to. The young man insists on hearing the visitor's name, stating that even a charcoal seller like himself can't know it now, but someone else will in the future. The demon slayer turns to his host, Sumiyoshi, and expresses his belief that even those who master their skills will ultimately meet the same fate, regardless of the path they choose, in a new era. He refutes Sumiyoshi's perception of him being special and asserts that he was unable to protect anything he valued and could not accomplish anything in life. He declares that his name is as worthless as he feels he is. Sumiyoshi pleads with him not to hate himself and deny his own statements. As he does, his voice fades into Tanjiro's as he wakes up in tears, realizing that he had been dreaming. Confused about his surroundings, Kanao Tsuyuri enters the room and accidentally drops a vase, but quickly rushes over to him, informing him that he had been unconscious for 2 months since the battle. She expresses her relief that he is now awake, tears forming in her eyes. Goto, a member of the Kakashi and Tanjiro's acquaintance, reminisces about the moment he found Tanjiro and his friends in the aftermath of the Yoshiwara incident, finding it amusing that they were huddled together in a coma. On his way to bring some kasela for Tanjiro, he notices Kanao's broken vase and scolds her for her lack of awareness and silence. He informs her that he brought kasela for Tanjiro, but is surprised when Tanjiro weakly thanks him. In shock, Goto drops the dessert and berates Kanao for not informing him that Tanjiro had awakened, before calling out to Kiyo Terahachi, Sumi Nakahara, Naho Takada, and Ai Kanzaki. Kiyo, Sumi, and Naho are overjoyed to learn that Tanjiro has woken up, and a tearful Ai expresses her gratitude that he survived, as he had taken her place on the mission. When Tanjiro asks about his friends, Goto informs him that Zenitsu had recovered 2 days ago. Goto also recalls witnessing Tenjin leaving the district with his wives while heavily injured, while Sumi notes that Inosuke was on the brink of death. Ai explains that the poison had severely affected him. Upon hearing this, Tanjiro imagines that Inosuke is hanging from the ceiling above them, causing all of them to look up. To their surprise, Inosuke appears alive and well, hanging from the ceiling panels before landing on the bed. Inosuke playfully insults Tanjiro for causing them all to worry, while Naho points out that he is the one acting abnormally, as even Shinobu had been concerned about his condition. Kiyo then presents Tanjiro with a book, turning to a page that discusses the honey badger and its impressive toughness. She mentions how Shinobu had compared Inosuke to this animal. Ai insists that Inosuke should get off Tanjiro's bed, leading to an argument between Inosuke and Goto. Ai tries to separate them, while Kanao pleads with them to be quiet since Tanjiro is sleeping. When they don't listen, Kanao raises her voice and demands that they be quiet. Kiyo then takes Kanao away to cook for Tanjiro. Later that night, Tamayo's cat, which is wearing Yushiro's talisman, watches over Tanjiro from a tree. A week later, Tanjiro is out of bed and has resumed his rehabilitation training. Ai writes a letter to Goto, explaining that Inosuke has returned to duty and Zenitsu is on a joint mission with other demon slayers. Tanjiro asks about his new sword, but the girls hesitate to answer. They reveal that Hagenzuka has refused to make him a new sword and has sent letters expressing his anger. Tanjiro is disappointed but is told that he can go to the village where the swordsmiths reside. Outside the butterfly mansion, a female Kakashi introduces herself and gives Tanjiro a blindfold, earplugs, and nose plugs to wear, as the village is kept secret. During Tanjiro's journey to the swordsmith village, he is accompanied by various Kakashi. who are guided by Kasugai crows to keep the location of the village a secret. When he finally removes his blindfold, he is awestruck by the sight of the village, where all of its inhabitants wear Hayatoko masks to conceal their identities. Despite catching a whiff of a nearby hot spring, he follows the directions of the Kakashi and meets the village chief, Tekken Tekakawahara, whom he thanks excitedly. However, his loud cry of gratitude echoes throughout the forest and is heard by someone bathing in the hot springs. It turns out that the person bathing is none other than the love Hashira, Mitsuri Kenroji, who becomes thrilled upon realizing that someone has arrived. When Tanjiro meets with Tekken, he respectfully bows and is offered sweets. Tekken informs him that Hagenzuka Hataru, the smith who made Tanjiro's broken blade, is currently missing, and that they are searching for him. Although Tanjiro is confused by the name, Tekken clarifies that it is Hagenzuka's full name. Tekken expresses dismay at Hagenzuka's fiery temper, even when he was a child, and Tanjiro apologizes for chipping his blade. However, the chief ominously informs Tanjiro that it is the smith's fault for making weak blades. Recognizing that Tanjiro is still unable to fight demons, Tekken advises him to visit the hot springs and heal, promising that if Hagenzuka is not found by the time Tanjiro recovers, a new smith will be designated. Following Tekken's directions, Tanjiro heads to the hot springs, but suddenly hears a loud voice calling out to him. Mitsuri was overjoyed as she hurriedly descended the stairs to greet someone while Tanjiro asked her to cover herself up. However, Mitsuri was crestfallen when the person she had asked for their name completely ignored her, even when she had greeted them. Tanjiro noticed Mitsuri's distress and informed her that dinner would be ready soon, which lifted her spirits. Later, Tanjiro and Mitsuri were at the hot springs when Tanjiro was suddenly struck by a loose tooth. Surprised, he looked around and noticed Genya Shinazugawa, the only other person present, with his distinctive mohawk, and remembered their previous encounters. He called out to Genya and inquired about his relationship with the wind Hashira. However, Genya responded with hostility and pushed Tanjiro's face into the water before leaving abruptly. Back in the village, Tanjiro was amazed at the amount of food Mitsuri had consumed, but she insisted that she had only nibbled. He revealed that the person she had met at the hot springs was Genya, Seimi Shinazugawa's brother. Mitsuri was taken aback since Seimi had never mentioned having a sibling, and both she and Tanjiro became concerned that they might be on bad terms since they both cherished their siblings. When Genya failed to appear, they decided to offer him onigiri. While walking to his room, Tanjiro asked Mitsuri why she had joined the Demon Slayer Corps. She became flustered and explained that she had joined to find someone strong to protect her since she wanted to get married. But she couldn't just introduce herself to a Hashira, so she became one instead, leaving Tanjiro speechless. As Tanjiro and Nezuko searched for the hidden weapon the next day, they realized that Genya was not in his room. Meanwhile, a Kakashi drew Mitsuri's attention to her sword being honed and requested that she check on the adjustments. Tanjiro offered to walk her, but she declined, saying that she would be leaving the village soon. This left Tanjiro and Nezuko saddened. However, Mitsuri praised Tanjiro for fighting an upper rank and mentioned that such a fight was an invaluable experience. She expressed her support for the siblings and left them shocked by her positive attitude. Before leaving, she informed Tanjiro that he could train with a special weapon hidden in the village, now that he had been granted extended stay. The next day, Tanjiro and Nezuko enjoyed breakfast provided by the village before setting out to find the hidden weapon. As they walked, Tanjiro noted that due to his incomplete recovery, his sense of smell still allowed him to detect the scent of the hot springs. Suddenly, he heard two voices arguing in the distance. One was a young swordsmith who wanted to protect something, and the other was a demon slayer who demanded that he use it. Tanjiro recognized the swordsman as the mist Hashira, Mukairo Takedo, but as he approached, he saw someone familiar standing with them. It was the same man from his dream, which left Tanjiro in shock. Observing from behind the trees, Tanjiro sees that the young swordsmith is persistently denying Mukairo's request for a key and refusing to disclose its usage. Tanjiro feels the urge to intervene and mediate the situation, but the mist Hashira becomes annoyed and aggressively strikes the boy's neck, causing him to lose consciousness. Tanjiro rushes to the scene and confronts Mukairo, trying to free the boy from his hold, but he is unable to move the Hashira's arm, despite being smaller and thinner than him. Mukairo responds by elbowing Tanjiro's stomach, causing him immense pain and mocking him for his weakness. As Mukairo senses a demon inside the box he is carrying, Tanjiro swats his hand away, demanding he not touch it. Tanjiro then manages to pull the young smith away from Mukairo's grip, which surprises him. However, the swordsmith remains stubborn and refuses Tanjiro's help, reiterating his decision not to give the key as he believes that the item is delicate and could potentially break. Mukairo belittles the young swordsmith for withholding the key in such dire circumstances and claims he could easily make another one. He berates him for causing unnecessary delay, questioning how many lives might have been lost while he clings onto something so trivial. The Hashira also suggests that a swordsmith's value is solely in making weapons since they cannot fight. Despite Tanjiro's defense of the swordsmith's importance, Mukairo interrupts him, deeming his speech boring before rendering him unconscious with a chop to the neck. When Tanjiro wakes up later, he asks for Hagenzuka, but the swordsmith informs him that he's not around. Tanjiro inquires about Mukairo's whereabouts, and the swordsmith reveals that he gave him the key to get rid of him. Grateful for Tanjiro's defense, the boy thanks him for intervening in a hopeless argument. He then explains that the man who was with them was a mechanical doll that required the key. The doll has 108 movements and can overpower a person. Suddenly, a loud clash startles them, and the swordsmith realizes that Mukairo has activated the doll. As Tanjiro and the swordsmith observe, Mukairo engages in a rapid skirmish with the battle doll, known as Yoriichi Type 0, built by the swordsmith's ancestors. The doll's 6 arms were necessary to replicate the incredible speed of a person from the Sengoku period, whose identity remains unknown. Tanjiro recognizes the doll's face but cannot remember where he has seen it before. The swordsmith sadly notes that the doll cannot be repaired if broken, adding to its sentimental value. As Mukairo fights, a shrill voice belonging to Mukairo's Kasugai crow interrupts, claiming that Mukairo's prodigious skill is due to being a descendant of the wielder of sun breathing. Tanjiro notes that Mukairo doesn't use sun breathing, and the crow bites him in defense of her owner. The swordsmith suggests that Tanjiro may have seen an inherited memory from one of his ancestors, and introduces himself as Kotsu. A loud crash signals Mukairo's devastating blow to the doll, causing Kotsu to run away in anguish. Tanjiro eventually locates him up in a tree using his sense of smell, offering to help. Despite Tanjiro's encouragement to continue, Kotsu refuses, feeling that all his generation's accomplishments will end with him. Tanjiro remains determined, stating that he must try for his future self and the future of swordsmithing. While walking back to the doll, Tanjiro and Kotsu notice Mukairo making his way towards them, having finished what he considered a successful training session. The Mist Hashira informs them that his own sword had snapped during the session, and he would now be using one of the doll's arms with a blade attached to it. As Mukairo throws his old sword at Tanjiro's head, Kotsu rushes over to the doll. Despite the rain, Tanjiro suggests testing if the Yoriichi Type 0 is still functional by setting it upright and turning the key. To their amazement, the doll still works, despite the damage inflicted upon it by Mukairo. Still upset with Mukairo's actions, Kotsu wants Tanjiro to train with the doll in the hope of surpassing the Mist Hashira. Tanjiro agrees, believing that training with the doll will help him improve his abilities and bring him closer to defeating Muzan Kibutsuji and saving Nezuko. He also notes that even if he cannot achieve his goals in his lifetime, he remains hopeful that future generations will continue his legacy. As they train with the doll, Kotsu is inspired to continue his work as a swordsmith, encouraged by Tanjiro's words of hope and determination. As Tanjiro fights the Yoriichi Type 0 doll, he struggles to keep up with its speed and cannot land a hit. Kotsu, who is now revealed to be hot-headed and quick-witted, insults Mukairo and guides Tanjiro on his mistakes. To make him feel the urgency of defeating the doll, Kotsu forces Tanjiro to train without food or water. However, even with this punishment, Tanjiro is still unable to defeat the doll. As it starts to rain, Tanjiro manages to catch some rainwater for a drink. Suddenly, he faints in the middle of the battle. He finds himself walking on a bridge towards the afterlife and falls into a river. As he feels himself being massaged, he sees a shiny stone and smells it. Upon touching it, he wakes up in the middle of the battle with the doll. Tanjiro detects a new scent and focuses on the doll's moving arms and legs. He successfully dodges a swing to his head and makes a significant hit. Exhausted and weary, Tanjiro slumps to the ground. Kotsu offers him some food, which Tanjiro gratefully accepts. Tanjiro's regained energy allows him to face the bladed Yoriichi Type 0 more confidently, predicting its movements and strategizing his attacks. After backing away, he charges forward, leaping over the doll and slicing down with his blade. However, he hesitates in midair, reluctant to damage something of value to Kotsu. To his surprise, the swordsmith urges him to strike, assuring him that he can always repair it. Encouraged, Tanjiro strikes the doll and breaks his blade, tumbling to the ground. Kotsu rushes to his side, but Tanjiro apologizes for the broken sword. The smith assures him it's fine and they hear a cracking sound as the doll's body splits open, revealing a hidden sword inside. The two are amazed to see a sword over 300 years old emerge from the doll's head. As Tanjiro and Kotsu examine the newly discovered sword, they are excited at the prospect of using it in battle. However, their enthusiasm quickly turns to disappointment as they realize the blade is severely rusted. Tanjiro is crestfallen, but Kotsu tries to console him by reminding him of the sword's historical significance. Just then, the ground begins to shake, and they turn to see Hataru Hagenzuka approaching them. Hataru, who has transformed into a muscular figure, declares that the sword should be left to him. Tanjiro and Kotsu are confused by his sudden claim, believing that the sword should belong to Kotsu since he is a swordsmith. Hataru insists that he is the best person to wield the sword and tries to take it from them. As Tanjiro tries to talk to the smith, the latter ignores him and snatches the blade away, knocking both Tanjiro and Kotsu to the ground. Confused by the man's behavior, they are soon joined by Kozo Kanamori, who reveals that tickling Hataru can calm him down. With Hataru subdued, Kozo explains that the eccentric swordsmith had secluded himself in the mountains to train and create an unbreakable blade for himself, which surprises Tanjiro. Kozo also reveals that Hataru appreciates Tanjiro for having faith in him to create a sword, as other demon slayers tend to dislike him due to his poor social skills. Hataru suddenly wakes up and announces his plan to polish and restore the rusty blade, leading Kotsu to question why he didn't mention that earlier. Hataru becomes angry and grabs Kotsu, but Tanjiro and Kozo tickle him until he exhausts himself. Before they leave, Hataru gives Tanjiro an alternative blade to use, which the demon slayer gratefully accepts. The following day in the village, Tanjiro informs Genya about Hataru's dangerous polishing practices, but the latter shows no concern and rejects Tanjiro's offer of friendship due to their past disagreement during final selection. Tanjiro tries to make peace by offering him a rice cracker, which Genya crushes in anger. Tanjiro also notices that Genya is missing a tooth and pulls it out to return it to him, but Genya kicks him out of the room in disgust. Back in his quarters, Tanjiro braids Nezuko's hair in Mitsuri's style while reflecting on Genya's temper and concludes that he is probably just hungry. Meanwhile, a swordsmith discovers an ornate vase on the steps and is suddenly pulled inside, crushed and mangled by the opening. The demon Goyako emerges and expresses his disdain for the taste of swordsmiths. He aims to destroy the swordsmith village to weaken the demon slayers. On a rooftop, Hantengu, now a member of the Upper Five, recalls Muzan's anger at their meeting and decides to eliminate everyone in the village to please him. In the forest, Genya enters his swordsmith's hut and finds his newly crafted Nichiren sword. He thinks about his older brother and resolves to fulfill his duty. While Tanjiro is sleeping, Nichiren wakes him up by pinching his nose and asks for the location of Kozo Kanamori, his new swordsmith. Tanjiro suggests that Kozo may be with Hataru and offers to search for him with Nichiren. Seeing Tanjiro's cheerful and helpful demeanor, Nichiren asks him why he cares so much about people. Tanjiro responds that he believes helping others will ultimately benefit him, and suggests they go together since the timing is right. Nichiren is surprised by Tanjiro's answer and asks him to repeat it. Nezuko wakes up and happily greets Tanjiro, prompting Nichiren to comment on her odd behavior without being able to explain why. Suddenly, they hear someone outside their room. The door slides open and Hantengu crawls towards them, appearing tearful and anxious. Tanjiro and Nichiren are confused by his sudden appearance but quickly realize that Hantengu is an upper-ranked demon. Nichiren unsheathes his sword and uses mist breathing, fourth form, shifting flow slash, rushing towards the demon and striking him, only to miss and find Hantengu on the ceiling with a small cut. Hantengu begs them to stop tormenting him as he heals. Tanjiro puts aside his nerves and uses Hinakami Kagura, Sunflower Thrust, but he too fails to make contact with Hantengu, who is now on the floor. Tanjiro becomes increasingly confused as the demon doesn't fight back. Nezuko grows in size and lands a powerful kick on Hantengu, slamming him into the wall. Tanjiro warns her against using this form, as it will only further her transformation into a full demon. With the demon stunned by Nezuko's kick, Nichiren seizes the opportunity and beheads Hantengu. While Tanjiro and Nichiren were fighting the upper-ranked demon Hantengu, they quickly realized that beheading alone wasn't enough to kill these powerful demons. Tanjiro warned Nichiren to stay alert as the demon's severed head grew a new body, and the headless body took on a new head and form. Tanjiro took on the standing demon while Nichiren attacked the one in front of him. Suddenly, the demon in front of Nichiren used a leaf-shaped Uchiwa to blast him away with a powerful gust of wind, sending him flying and destroying the room. The demon, a manifestation of pleasure, laughed at Nichiren's defeat and asked his fellow demon Sakito if he agreed. However, the manifestation of anger, who was also present, did not find it fun and ranted angrily at the demon Karaku, who he was joined with. As Tanjiro and Nezuko attempted to plan an attack, Sakito used his Kakara to summon bolts of electricity, paralyzing them in place. Tanjiro almost lost consciousness from the attack but saw someone on the roof above them. It was Genya, who fired Nichiren's steel shot at the demons with a handheld double-barrel shotgun, beheading Sakito but only partially severing Karaku's neck. Genya rushed down to finish off the second demon, but Tanjiro tried to warn him that the demons couldn't be defeated if they wanted to be beheaded. Despite Tanjiro's warning, Genya beheaded Karaku, and the battle was won. Upon witnessing the demon's rapid healing and shapeshifting abilities, Tanjiro realizes that beheading them is not a viable solution. He tries to search for a weakness but to no avail, as they all seem to heal at the same rate. He then notices one of the demons is missing and is suddenly pulled up by a winged demon, out of Nezuko's reach. Tanjiro orders her to assist Genya, who has been impaled by the spear-wielding demon. However, he is horrified to witness the winged demon insult him for being concerned about others but himself and prepares to attack. Tanjiro attempts to use Hinakami Kagura but is met with a powerful sonic shriek that causes him to bleed and only manages to cut off the demon's leg that was holding him. He falls to the ground, struggling to get up and save the villagers. Due to the attack, his body is numb and he cannot hear anything. Suddenly, he realizes that the demon's leg is still holding him, and he turns to see a new head about to unleash another sonic strike. Meanwhile, New Cairo, having landed safely a great distance away, sees a fish-like demon attempting to eat Kotsu. Despite the child's lack of swordsmanship skills, New Cairo deems helping him to be of low priority and decides to continue his pursuit of finding the main demon body. He realizes that the fish-like demon is not the main body but rather one created through a technique. He understands that protecting the chief is the most crucial mission when the village is attacked, as the demon grabs hold of Kotsu. After hearing Tanjiro's words about helping others, New Cairo stops in his tracks and remembers their importance. He sees a fish demon squeezing Kotsu unconscious, but rushes in and slices off its arm, freeing the young swordsmith. New Cairo orders Kotsu to run away and beheads the demon as it heals and lunges at him. He notices the vase on its back, slices through it, and confirms that it was a blood demon art. Kotsu thanks New Cairo for saving his life and apologizes for insulting him. The Hashira does not understand what he is talking about and tries to move on, but Kotsu begs him to save Kozo, who is currently under attack. He also tells New Cairo about Hataru, who has been polishing a blade day by day alone, and begs him to save them. Initially, New Cairo tries to ignore Kotsu's request, but suddenly remembers Kaguya Yubayashiki's words, "You will definitely get yourself back, New Cairo." Kaguya had visited him during his recovery from a demon attack and told him to focus on surviving, and that his lost memories would return in time. New Cairo recalls Kaguya's advice to not overlook even insignificant events, as they can trigger memories to return. With Kotsu on his shoulder, he races through the forest, despite his reservations about leaving the village unprotected. He reminds himself of his status as the Mist Hashira and his ability to succeed. Meanwhile, Tanjiro faces off against the Joy Demon, slicing it in half to prevent a sonic attack. The halves regenerate and fire at him, but he notices that the demons share a common power. Each demon has an emotion etched onto its tongue, with the Joy Demon being the one Tanjiro faces. Despite stabbing through the halves of flesh, the demon strikes Tanjiro's shoulder and continues to assault him, slashing his forearm, shoulder, thigh, and chest. Tanjiro manages to cut through the demon's head, but it regenerates and takes flight again. With determination, Tanjiro cuts through the head once more, causing the demon to fall to the ground, though it quickly regenerates again. Tanjiro, unable to help Nezuko and Genya, pleads with them to stay alive. While Nezuko struggles against Karaku, Genya has a Yari lodged in his chest, making it difficult for him to move. Sakito orders the Demon of Pleasure to rip Nezuko's limbs off, but Karaku wants to savor the fight and directs the Demon of Anger to help Izetsu. The Demon of Sorrow attempts to kill Nezuko but is unable to extract his Yari, giving Genya the opportunity to shoot and blow off his head. Izetsu is frustrated with his slow thinking as the headless demon retrieves his Yari from Genya and heals himself quickly. Despite thinking he is about to die, Genya begins to recite the Amida Sutra, which infuriates Sakito, causing him to demand Genya's head be split in half. Izetsu reluctantly complies, but he misses his target, and Genya suddenly appears behind him, attempting to slice his neck. However, he is hit by Sakito's electricity and struggles to pull the trigger of his shotgun. Genya finally manages to aim at Sakito and fires, severing the demon's right hand. The Demon of Anger refuses to believe Genya is still alive, but Izetsu hits him with his Yari, sending him flying. Karaku, having enjoyed himself, drives his foot through Nezuko and impales her torso. He instructs Sakito to impale her with his Kakara and shock her repeatedly after ripping off her limbs until she can no longer move. Sakito, infuriated, agrees that it was his original plan. Nezuko manages to kick Karaku in the jaw and partially sever his neck before tearing her hand away. Her blood sprays on the Demon of Pleasure, and she uses exploding blood to set him on fire. Nezuko twists Karaku's hand and uses the Uchiwa to blast him away with his own wind while he is distracted. She tries to do the same to Sakito, but he knocks the Uchiwa away with his Kakahara and stabs her in the neck. Then he shocks her with his electricity, leaving her immobilized. Meanwhile, Tanjiro is unable to fend off the winged demon and sustains a cut to his cheek. He notices that the building where Genya and Nezuko are is nearby and tries to come up with a plan to help them, but he cannot find an alternative. As the demon swoops down, Tanjiro slashes at his feet but misses, then dodges the claws. He once again begs Nezuko and Genya to stay alive, hoping to be able to assist them. In another part of the area, Izetsu approaches Genya, who appears to be unconscious, only to find out that he is still reciting his sutra. Izetsu asks him who he is, and the Demon Slayer replies that he is Shinazugawa Genya, the man who will kill him. Tanjiro decides to use the demon's momentum to help him reach Nezuko and Genya, so he runs towards the building, luring the Demon of Joy with him. As the demon swoops down to attack him with his claws, Tanjiro dodges and stabs the demon in the leg and mouth with his sword. Despite the demon clawing at his back, Tanjiro perseveres through the pain and notices that the demon's body is light in order to fly. Tanjiro skillfully maneuvers the demon's body with his sword, using it as a makeshift glider to fly back to the building where Nezuko is being shocked by Sakito. Upon arrival, he punches through the wall using the demon's body and sees that both Karaku and Hirogi have been defeated. The demon of anger tries to stab Tanjiro with his newly grown kakara, but the demon slayer is unfazed as the cells on Yoroga's severed foot prevent conduction of electricity. He slashes the demon's tongue and saves Nezuko by removing the kakara from her neck with the demon's foot. Sakito then attempts to stab Tanjiro in the neck, but Nezuko intervenes and stops the weapon. She then uses her blood demon art to burn Sakito with her blood, enraging him. Karaku suddenly returns and unleashes a powerful downburst that pins the siblings to the floor. As the floor gives way, they fall unconscious to the bottom of the building, with Sakito, Karaku, and Yorogi intent on continuing the fight. Meanwhile, in the Swordsmith village, fish demons attack and the swordsmiths struggle to defend themselves. A Kasugai crow alerts Mitsuri to the incoming enemy attacks and she hurries to the village to save the villagers, bringing the episode to an end.